Calling to order the town council work session. Of course, as you all know, we don't make motions, we don't vote, this is an informative discussion meeting more than anything. We'll start with the roll call though, Melanie.
Connie Reed. Here. Carl Kincaid.
Present.
Debbie Miller.
Here.
Brian Hill.
Here.
Scott Glover.
Here.
Moving on down to discuss the minutes of August the 6th. You have the minutes. Does anybody have anything in discussion in the minutes? How are you? There's no discussion. Everybody else have the minutes. We'll move on down to budget and finance, and we'll discuss the July. This is the first financial meeting of budget 2025. So you have that in your package. Now, is there anything you're Ms. T want to point out of this?
Well, there's one thing I'd like to point out, it's probably going to catch your eye. Go down to payments in lieu of property tax. You know, we budgeted 22, and we've got 192, 502, 66. And when I saw that, I thought, I went to Missy, something's wrong.
But it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. So anyway, what happened is the tax equivalencies have gone up in the electric department. That is just one time from the electric department. So we'll probably get another one from them.
I'll take it. That started to say, didn't it?
Have you heard that? That's what they told us when we called down there.
It's the first thing I saw on here too.
Yeah, we went back, we looked, we made sure it was in our right.
We called?
We called
Like,
yeah.
That was Dixon Electric.
Dixon Electric, that is correct. Because we went back and we looked at the history, and usually we get like maybe about 7,000 a year, or 7,000 to 8,000 from Dixon. So I don't know. That's just what they told us, and the only thing we've got to tell them.
They're not going to ask for it back.
No, I started to
I hope
say.
not.
That's a very niche category. Only certain things fall into that, like utilities. So.
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, that 420%, that's kind of
That catches your eye. That's exactly.
I thought you were going to tell us, and so that's a typo. No, but I mean, $2,000.
We really checked into it. I tell you, it took us extensive investigation into that.
Well, that's good. We're a little ahead then, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Way
This is
ahead.
pretty good, yeah. Okay.
And then anything else, let's see. I even questioned beer permits because I knew it wasn't beer permit time for me to renew, and we got $100. But then we went back and looked at that, and that's to do a special event that was out at the Civic Center.
Oh, okay.
So that was, I don't see anything else unless you see something. But everything else looks good.
So July is the first month of the fiscal year.
That is correct.
We've already collected, excuse me, 2,600 in rural fire service.
Oh, yeah, the property taxes up there, you know, it says that we've taken in $708. That's to do with the rollback and the property taxes, to do with Greenbelt. So we had to bill for that, so, and that comes from the assessor's office. So we got a little bit more money, and that would go into this, put it in current year.
But that's going to stay where it is probably for a minute.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
It's okay, the TV franchise tax almost doubled what we expected.
No,
pay quarterly?
we've just gotten 11,000, we've only gotten 11,552.28.
And the estimated average monthly is 6,300.
So that's just the average, because the computer just automatically averages it.
Isn't that what we expect?
Yeah, we're expecting to get 76,754 this year on that.
So, Melody, do they pay monthly on the franchise taxes? I didn't think they did.
No, they don't.
Right, so you're gonna get a good chunk.
Right,
So it'll.
right. See, that, it's, the accounting system breaks it down by the month of what, so that's the reason why that can be confusing, I know, but it does, and there's nothing we can do about it, it just automatically does it.
Well, just for my information, is it a standard amount of chunks we can expect to happen, or do they just do it willy-nilly?
You're talking about the cable TV franchise, you're talking about, it's based on how many people that have cable TV.
Okay. Does that include the new Ignite?
No, we're not getting anything on that yet. This is just mostly Xfinity, AT&T gives a check from them.
I understand, but will we be getting
I
anything from?
think the way I understand it, we'll get,
Most of
good.
that operates under the state franchise now. Like back in the day, you go back 10, 15, 20 years, each of those would have to negotiate with each of the local governments. They just go to the state now, and then through the state, we get a check. So,
Because Ignite is just internet and not necessarily television related. I'm just wondering if we're gonna get anything from that or not, or is it just what we label it cable TV, but it does include internet?
Yeah.
So the Verizon, when they went through here and signed up everybody, we get some of that?
We don't, I haven't seen a check from Verizon, have you? I don't recall it, it's just the cable, it's only the ones that have the cable TV. If you have, and if you have your internet through, like say Comcast, we get it through that too. We get that.
So is it restricted to only things that are hardwired, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was gonna, I think you have to have lines.
Yeah.
For it to count. If it's a, you know, 5G box, no.
So AT&T runs a DSL line up to your house, does that include that?
Their internet, we get it, you know, like they have, it's AT&T internet service, we get some of that.
You don't get anything off the satellite customer stuff, do you?
No.
And what you're saying, what I understand, is actual, this, we might not get that much next month, or maybe not another big chunk until,
We get that quarterly.
yeah, quarter, okay,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, so we can't expect that amount every month.
No, not that exact amount.
Okay.
So we multiply 6396.17 by 3, that would give us,
No, you just multiply it by, yeah, check out this figure right here. That's just a monthly, if you're going to do it by the month, you multiply that by 11. So that's broke it down by the month.
But we don't get it every
We don't
month.
get it every month. It's just the computer system doing it that way.
you said we get it quarterly.
We do get it.
So if we multiplied that number times 3, that would give us a quarter.
No.
Okay.
No, you talk about this number right here, the 6396. No, that's just a monthly average.
Yeah, but if you times 3, that would give us a quarterly average.
No, that's a monthly average there. The quarterly average will come over in this right here.
Okay.
And Joe, if you think I'm misspeaking or not telling it right,
Well, I think they're supposed to pay quarterly. I've known it to be sporadic, so
Mhm.
again, we're looking at historical averages on what they pay, but like Melody was saying, we get, I think it's 5% is the state. So 5% of gross revenue for hardline. The reason it exists is they're in our public right of way. So if they're not in our public right of way, we don't get anything under this system. So that's set by the state typically now, and it's 5%. So it could fluctuate. I mean, if everybody in the town canceled their Comcast, that number could go down.
They probably will when Ignite comes through.
And if Ignite's using our public right of way, it'd be, you're trading for the same thing.
They are, the fiber optic runs right below the power and above Comcast.
So, I mean, to your point, if we got, let's call it $12,000, if you multiply that times 4, you'd get the year, or the fiscal year, right? But I don't know what that, I don't know if they're actually saying that's quarterly, or they just got around to making a partial payment. That's what came in. So that would be, if you multiply that by 4, that's less than 76, but we'll see when they make another payment.
No matter what we get each month, if it's estimated that we're gonna get 77,000 a year from them, you're still gonna average it out monthly, but that doesn't mean
Yeah,
you get that much
the
each
system
month.
averages
Just-
out, yeah, of what it's gonna be monthly.
Yeah. And probably there's several things on here that.
Oh,
works that way.
it's on every line item,
Yeah.
yeah.
And even though it says you'll get it each month, so the average, doesn't mean you're gonna get it.
So this interest earnings, what does that pertain to? 36 something.
36.
On section.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, right now, that is our checking account interest that we've gotten.
That's not the money we have.
Oh, no, it's, I've got that on the back sheet there. On the very back.
Right.
Yes, right there, yeah.
So, and nowhere does it show it in the summary.
No.
What's the reason behind that?
Well, because we haven't used that money yet, and so we just use this to, we try not to add that, because some of this is gonna go toward the grant. So we're gonna try to use that as a revenue.
But the interest does not go towards the grant.
Well,
I thought just the grant money that's in there goes towards.
it does, but the interest, if we're getting off this grant money, we gotta let that go toward the grant too.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, him, I mean,
Can you repeat your question again?
I had two questions.
Okay.
Interest money that is in the local government investment pool for $1.8 million. Why does not the interest that's earned show up on our summary of financials? And it was my understanding that the interest was always going to be for whatever we want to spend it on and not towards the grant, because that's what the $1.8 million is for, the grant money.
That was my understanding too. Because we.
well, it's gonna go with the grant, but we're not, the interest money we get off the local government investment pool. Part of that money is grant money.
Yes.
So the interest we make off of that, we're not gonna use it to day-to-day operations of the money for the city. So once we use that grant money, that interest is gonna go, we're gonna use that towards the grant also, the interest that's been made.
Okay, that was not described to us in the past.
Is that what was done last year?
I don't never remember talking about it.
Well, I do remember talking about it, and I'd have to go back and look at the minutes
Yeah.
to see exactly how it's worded. I do remember talking about it. But I never remember, no matter if it goes to grant doesn't, have never taken that interest
Right.
and put it in
Right.
here
Right.
as a revenue.
Right,
You know.
that's exactly right.
So the question I'd like to ask is, so let's say we spend the grant money tomorrow, can we take the interest legally out and not spend it toward the grant item? Because technically that's our money, not grant money. So could we as a council bring that back into the general fund if we so desired?
I will find out. I know it does get tricky with grants.
Right.
Obviously, the money we were given for the grant's not touchable but for the grant.
Correct.
We all agree on that.
Mhm.
Just because grant money is in the local investment pool doesn't change anything. I mean, it's in there earning interest, you're seeing it monthly.
Right.
I will find out what the correct answer is on what happens with interest, so.
Because it's me, just me in this one seat, I would prefer not to leave it with the grant. Because I think that money could be utilized in other areas more efficiently.
Well, and I guess as a hypothetical, what if this body said, let's put an additional 200,000 in there of just general fund money? That wouldn't go towards the grant, but it's earning interest too.
Correct.
So how are those different or the same, right?
Right.
I'll get you an answer by Tuesday.
As far as that money in there that's in the local government investment pool is not all grant money. And that definitely goes
Right.
back to general fund. But what's in there, it's grant money would, we're trying to earmark it for the grant, so.
Yeah, but once the grant goes out, there will be money left over, and
Right.
then there can be a discussion of, does it get
Exactly.
pulled back in, or do you leave it earning interest? I mean, that you
Right.
have flexibility.
Right.
But is it restricted or not? And I guess we'll have to get
Yeah.
back to.
So if I remember right, the grant was 1.3?
No, 1,083,000 something.
So there's $800,000 in there that's not grant money.
Mhm.
That came from general.
General
Right.
fund. Mhm.
So,
Less than 8, but yes, close.
So some of that we're going to, is ours
70
anyway,
something.
not earmarked to the grant.
so
Left over.
so we have almost $800,000 in there earning interest, yet all the interest of last year stayed in this local government investment,
All our money in there stayed in there, yes.
and which was 12 times 8,000 roughly.
Very close.
Yeah.
So,
If there was so much when it was maybe 7,000 or 6,000,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it earned approximately 80,000 over the investment
Or
period.
82.
Yeah,
as a whole.
as a whole.
So, more like, basically half of it, 40,000 we could have used and done something with, and put it back into the.
Well, it wasn't a budget line item. I mean, keep that, want to make sure we're not conflating.
I
If
did
it's
put
in the general
40,000 in the
fund.
budget line item for interest.
But if it's in the general fund earning interest, it's in the general fund
Right.
still.
Right.
You haven't allocated it towards an expense.
And it wouldn't hurt us to pull it out and,
You would just not earn interest if you pulled it out of this fund.
we could pass some roads.
So I guess then, Scott, the way I'm understanding it, maybe when that money's pulled out for the grant, I would think it would only be fair to somehow figure out how much of the money, before we make that decision, you need to figure out how much of that money,
What part of that interest is
yeah,
for the grant?
yeah, what part is interest, what
And
part
that's
is
easy.
our 800,000.
Mhm.
I would take it.
That was, I know that was part of the
I'd
discussion.
utilize it all, because the grant itself, we didn't have to invest it, it could just be sitting there doing nothing.
But we did talk about the fact that when we get ready to start paying for stuff, it's gonna be higher because everything else is higher. So we're gonna need probably that money that the grant itself earned, we're probably gonna need that.
Well,
That's just my take on it.
but if we pull it out and put it somewhere else, it'll still be there to use in case things are more expensive.
Right, and that's when we get to the discussion of when y'all say these $100, right? We've allocated $100 towards expenses across the board. that doesn't take into account the general fund all the time. Again, capital improvements you can pull from general fund, recurring expenses you cannot. So those are kind of the two categories. When your general fund's earning interest, your general fund's just growing. I mean, it's sitting there. If y'all, as a council, say we'd like to amend the budget to allocate $50,000 of general fund towards Project Y, it's within your discretion to do that. So it's not, Melody was asking before about putting this fund's interest on this sheet, and I said no, because it's part of the general fund just earning interest out there. And that's why it's a separate sheet on here so that you know what interest is being earned. But if you want to add a project, you would have to, if it's not already in the budget, you'd have to amend the budget and say, hey, we've got this extra interest money, let's go towards the project. Y'all can absolutely do that, if that makes sense. But it's not, it doesn't just go somewhere, it stays in the general fund.
It's just general fund.
Until y'all decide to spend general fund dollars.
It's better where it's at now,
For interest purposes.
for interest purposes, yeah.
But, and that's also why it's not an expected revenue, because let's say, I'm not saying y'all, but a council, 2 months in, could pull all the money out, no longer getting the interest. Now that revenue expectation line has been blown up, right? So it would be predicated on staying in there, so it's not a revenue line. And again, the decision was made a long time ago to let y'all know what interest is being made every month, so you know that number, but it's not on the revenue sheet because it's not really a revenue for that purpose. Because you have, it's one of those few things y'all get to change the revenue. If you pulled it out, it's not making that revenue anymore. Y'all don't have the authority to change what the state and local option sales tax is or anything. That's coming in, so. But that's why it's a separate sheet, so you know what it is. And if y'all want to spend it towards something, you can spend it towards something.
And I think, if I remember some of the discussion, was that when we start using that grant money for what we're going to do, that grant money might not cover everything. And that's where we were saying, okay, I think that was part of the discussion. Let's wait and see, because I'd rather the interest stay there, and if we have to then use it along with grant money that we pull out to do what we have told the state or whoever we're going to do, it's there. It's the interest money that we would be using. So I do think some of that was part of the discussion.
Okay, so where can I find out how much interest there is total since this money got in there?
That's right down here. Ending balance right here, we put 1.8 million in there, so 90,557. And this is the average earning rate, but, and this is the daily basis. So we've got about 90,557 in interest.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's since, what did we say, August, I think, that's just date, since August.
We're almost out of here.
We're almost at a year, yeah.
So,
Not to be vague about it, is there a way we get that line on this report?
Well, I think.
if it's the will of the council to vote for that, y'all could motion for that, but I don't think that's best practice.
One of the things I'd like to put is the little bit, so I like the grant money. I mean, obviously we should get as much of that as we can. And I just have a question, so if you present a grant project, all right, and they give you $1 million, all right, and then it takes time, because you gotta get the property, you gotta get the equipment and all that stuff. By the time you do it, let's just say it's 105, or they give you $1 million and it's $1,500,000 by the time you do it. So we would be obligated to make up that difference in that cost to get the project done that we submitted that we would do. Like, if you say you're gonna pave 8 miles of highway and they give you $1 million, and by the time you get to the project, it's $1,500,000. are we required to make up the difference in that cost? We could just say, look, this is all we can do for a
Instead
meeting.
of doing 8 miles, we're gonna do 6 miles.
Okay, there's the question, yeah, okay, thank you, 'cause I wasn't sure, okay.
Well, and everything's an estimate, you don't know what's gonna be till you
You
bid
do it,
something.
absolutely, yeah.
And sometimes they come in lower and you can end up doing it, even with cost increase, and sometimes it's higher
Gotcha.
by a lot, and you gotta make a decision.
So I guess, what are you referring to then? What are you,
Well,
not you or Scott?
in my opinion, you know, like I say, just from this chair, to me, if we could, you know, we took the, what'd you say it was, 1.3, is that right? They gave us?
1,083,000.
If we could take that money and complete the, project that we wanted to complete to get the grant,
Mhm.
I'm not interested in taking the interest in extending that project. I would be more inclined to use that for paving or some other things along with, you know, so, in other words, if we can only afford to do, say, 5 miles of sidewalk, and rather than doing 8, I would rather take the rest of that interest money and pave some roads, do some other things. You know, that's just me, though. Because I do think, I do like the grant system. But I also understand that just because you get the grant and you do the grant item, doesn't necessarily mean that's the top of the desired items that we need. It's just what the grant was approved for, and we have to spend that money on that. But to me, that doesn't mean that's the most important project in the city. But nevertheless, you take the money. So, because, you know, I mean, why would you not? Because they're not going to give you money for anything you want to do.
Well, and again, you may have multiple projects in a fiscal year you're gonna get bids on, and so it's not like you have to do number 1 in the council's, you know, sheet, if you will, before you do number 2.
Correct.
But it's all a factor.
A package.
If I may, let me figure out exactly if there's any restrictions on the interest income first, and then if y'all want to see it presented differently based upon that, why don't y'all make a motion on Tuesday night on what you want to see based upon the answer I find. That's all right.
But if someone wants it to come in as revenue, we could take that interest and put it in as revenue.
You can, again, I don't think that's,
I don't think it's
I'm not an
best
expert,
practice,
but
yeah.
I've been told that that's not best practice, but that means the council's somewhat committing to not touching that interest for a year, because you're expecting it to be revenue. So that might, if you're expecting 100,000 in interest income and you pull it out halfway through the year, maybe you only got 50, you'll have a shortfall of $50,000 in interest income. And I think you would just have to know that going in if that were
Yeah.
the will of the council.
Or if you could just leave it all in there, it's just general fund.
Right, and that's,
Even if
again,
it's
that's the
interest
nature
or
of
what,
all
it's just general fund. And that's where we can
We can
pull
leave it in
money
there,
out.
and it's gonna draw interest,
Yeah.
you know, that
Instead of putting
interest
it
on
in
top
there.
of interest.
Yeah.
So if you pull it out, just you put it somewhere
But
else.
I'll get an answer and y'all can decide what y'all want to do.
Okay.
I personally don't like exploding interest income as much as we can. Obviously, there's a certain point where you need to spend something,
Yeah.
but I also don't like zero either. So, and I don't know what that number is, I'm not gonna pretend like I do, but maybe with a certain, us create a fictitious, this is our $0, and then above that we'll spend, and then to this certain point, so that way we can not explode that revenue that's coming in.
I just want to be able to understand the report better without having to ask everybody, well, how much did we put in there? Well, how long has this been in there for? That's all I want, is to be able to read the report and understand it. That's it.
Well, it sounds like the answer is, for tonight, interest is not reported as a revenue.
Except on
The revenue that's reported, that you see revenue here, is actually revenue that we are anticipating getting through the year.
Right, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I just would like to know how much interest we have earned and how much time it has been there to earn the interest without having to do math.
Okay. Is that on the last page?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
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 I'll bring my noisy calculator. Hey, then y'all wish.
Any more discussion, any more questions? I will say that I think that's probably one of the better things that this council voted to do last August, was to put it in where it earned it, instead of,
And, our auditor advised to do that, because it don't need to be hanging, when you got that much money, you need to invest it somewhere. Put it, well, it's not investment, but put it somewhere to where it's drawing more interest. I mean, even the state requires that. So,
The least risk for the most interest.
that's exactly right.
okay. Anything else on financial? Oh, moving on down, discuss the second reading ordinance to adopt and levy a property tax rate. Tuesday night, we'll have a public hearing on that, of course, not tonight. But,
Mayor, there's been no edit since last month, past first reading, and this was more of a housekeeping item because we didn't have the certified tax rate by the time this body adopted the budget ordinance, and it is required to be passed by ordinance with public hearing, so that'll be Tuesday night.
okay. Any discussion on
We put
this?
in the paper too.
You already had that?
Yeah,
Any discussion on this?
That's the only place it's been put.
that's one place we have to be, we're required to put it in the paper.
I know.
I mean, that's, well,
As
that's,
little as possible.
that's the law.
Oh, my God. That's,
What publication, circulation.
well, just put in the paper that, was it also put on social media? I mean, this first reading was one.
Oh, yeah, the reading,
Yeah,
I'm talking about the notice of public hearing.
Okay, okay. Moving on down, discuss the bids for the electronic sign at Town Hall. Jeff, you want to talk about that?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So we only had one bid on it. It actually came in, lower than what we budgeted for. I believe we budgeted 45. So the 43,080 is what we accepted.
And I assume, how did this go out for bid? Same old thing, newspaper.
It was,
Newspaper, Facebook, and website.
My mother lives in a little town in Texas, and she gets the Tyler newspaper, which is the 9th largest city in Texas. They had gone to delivering their newspaper 4 times a week, and now it's coming by mail. They're not going to deliver it. So I can just imagine what our local paper is up against and how much longer it's going to last. So
I think we have two, and I don't know how much longer they'll last. We have a Dixon Post and,
when it goes
Mayor,
away,
maybe-
what are we going to do?
Well, they just changed the state law on this, so we actually have to use the Dixon Post, because you have to now use, there's like 8 requirements, but one of them is they have to have a local office in your jurisdiction, so that'd be the county, and the Post is the only one that does. We actually can't even use the Tennessee anymore, which is not bad. Tennessee is more expensive, but, yeah.
Have the laws changed where municipalities are required to have at least 2 or more bids? Because there was a requirement at one time that you couldn't accept a bid if there was only one bidder. And that may go back decades, but
I will go look. I don't believe that's a requirement. If you put it out for bid, there was a requirement for a while, if you didn't put it out for bid, that you have to at least get like 2 informal, like go to 2 places for the plumbing thing, right? That's under 25,000. Sometimes municipalities can set those brackets, like if it's under 10, don't worry about it. If it's between 10 and 25, and if it's over 25, it's full public bid, right? But I'll double check.
So Becca, you say we don't have to send it out for bid, we can do it informal if it's below 25,000?
Correct.
Department heads have the ability to spend up to $25,000 without the council having to approve the bid.
Right.
If it's already part of the approved
If
budget.
it's in the budget, yes.
If it's outside, even if it's $5,000, it comes to council for approval. If it's outside of an approved budget line item.
We ran into that one time, we were talking about that the other day, a couple of years back. One of our EMS trucks, or what Eric was using as an EMS truck, had a lot of breakdowns, needed some repair, and it was just totally down. And so we were operating without any kind of EMS truck or any way for them, because we thought at that time that it had to go out for bid. Well, how do you put something out for bid when you don't know what's wrong with it, who's gonna do it? And I know Tim Potter came that night, and Tim looked at us and said, "You've got a truck here that you can't even use. This is an emergency. You don't go out for bid, you know, for something like that. You go, like she said, your department head can call 2 or 3 people that they know that works on stuff like that. He said, get your truck fixed." So you have to always have ways to not handicap you.
The mayor's right, there are caveats to the law for emergencies,
Yes.
and that information just has to come to the governing body at the next meeting.
Yeah.
But if it's a non-emergency, it typically goes through the process.
Well, the Field of Dreams, that's a good one, a good example. We had a lot of work done on it. Field of Dreams, we had to for safety purposes, and that's how that was done. Okay, so you're gonna find out if we've got to, can we accept this bid, it's the only one?
I will have an answer for you Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Will we also be provided with information about what is involved with the sign?
Yes.
What is
I've got
Okay,
that,
gotcha.
yeah. I just didn't, I started to put it with it, and then I thought, well, I'd just wait till Tuesday night to do it for you.
Thank you.
Codes and permits. Discuss second reading ordinance to revise zoning ordinance Article 4 supplementary provisions applying to specific districts, sections 4.010 off-street parking requirements. Tuesday night, of course, we'll have a public hearing on this because it is second reading. That's number 5 in your packet. Does anyone have anything new that they want to talk about on this?
I do.
What?
Question, and this is just something I was just simply wanting to get feedback on.
Okay.
Because as a whole, in general, I love this document. However, and I think on a small scale, it works beautifully just playing around with the numbers. But whenever we start getting to the large numbers, say a 100-door, 400-door apartment complex, this parking starts getting a lot. So how is that addressed? Is it just because we're anticipating that once we're on that level, it's going to get pushed to PUD, but does that PUD change the parking? I mean, so really my concern was not on a small level. Somebody's going to build a sixplex, I think this is fine. But like I said, if it's a 100, 200-door unit, that's a lot of parking. So how does that work?
It is a lot of parking, because it's a lot of people. But you're right, you would generally anticipate that development of that size would go toward a planned unit development. There are some flexibilities that are built in. There's also some relief or some avenues for relief that are built in through appeals, but with a planned unit development, you do have that ability to negotiate, if you will, in terms of parking. But when you do get to that level, you do anticipate having that many people. So really that's kind of a question that can't be answered kind of in a very specific way because it is kind of a case by case. But there are measures built in to provide more tailored solutions based on the specific projects that come up at the time.
I agree with Amanda. The PUD's going to allow flexibility, what the PUD is, and this body gets to weigh in on it. So maybe a 10% decrease on a large project might be appropriate in this body's mind because of the size. little bit more flexibility, right? And then, as Amanda said, you know, they also could explore, I think a PUD would be better, but they could explore a variance to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, what is the nature of that variance? They would have to figure that out and make their case versus a discussion with this body. But, no, there's flexibility. But if you came in as, just say, an R3 on a very large lot of land, variance would be the only option.
Yeah, just because, I mean, those numbers these numbers on a small scale are great, but on a large scale, it seems like we're creating islands of parking lots, and that's a bit, that to me is the opposite of what we were shooting for in the following document.
Right. And you're absolutely right. We do not want to create those seas of parking lots and things like that. So that is exactly to your point with those other ordinances that the council has seen fit to pass with the landscaping and things like that to try to help mitigate some of those. But again, you're correct. I mean, we don't want those seas. So those are certainly considerations. But that's where if they do come up under a PUD, those are the types of things that this body has the ability to take a look at and try to negotiate to what you all would see fit and acceptable.
So that's encouraging. So just for clarity, so if we were looking at a 100, 200 door apartment complex coming in here, it's encouraged and kind of angled in such a way to go to a PUD to where they could achieve variances and changes in this regulation. Okay. That was my concern. But like I said, if you're building 3, 4 plexes or something, this is fine.
Do you know something, William?
I don't. I'm just trying to consider all angles. And like I said, I talked to both guys. I spoke to local real estate agents. Like, I'm just trying to look abroad at going, well, what if? Because I just, again, good legislation. It should be able to hold up under all stressors. So.
And keep in mind, you mentioned the next item, which we'll get to, but parking lots don't count towards open space.
Right.
So it's going to be its own limiting factor, right?
Just trying to play devil's advocate in every single scenario. No, I don't know anything. I'm just trying to say, I'm just playing the what if game and just trying to stress test it, that's all.
And I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions on that?
So if we do come up with something against this type of situation, it's up to the builder to ask for a variance.
Or come to the PC and y'all under a PUD.
But they'll know that this is what it's gonna be, and they'll have to ask for a variance.
They'll have to say, I mean, they would say that it's more technical in a variance to the BZA, but they would probably need a good argument to this body to say, we need to go below the standard you set.
But we, town council, would see this.
Yes.
Okay.
For a PUD.
If it's a PUD.
But if it's not,
They're locked in or they get a variance.
so that's what I'm asking. The variance goes through the BZA.
Correct.
But
It doesn't go through here.
Correct.
The variance, only if it's turned down by the council, right?
No.
No? I thought that's when it goes to BZA, when it's turned down.
If it's turned down by the council, it goes to circuit court. If someone wants to challenge that.
So just as a distinction, so if you're going with just a straight non-planned unit development and an applicant is seeking a variance, those are very strictly governed by the state legislature. There are only 3 ways that you can get a variance. So, no, this body would not see it, but the standard for granting a variance is very high. It has to be related to topographic challenges. It can't be financial basis only. I mean, they're not rules that are set by this body. They are given to us by the state legislature. So the standard, again, is very high. It's very difficult. I very rarely get in a position where I recommend variances because they're very difficult. You would basically have to be in the middle of a development with a sinkhole in the middle of a property on the edge of a cliff. I mean, no joke, to be able to get a variance for something that's perfect.
Yeah, something very not flat or a lot that is very unusually shaped are going to be prime candidates. A large 50, 100-acre tract of land's not going to be a very good candidate for a variance. Not saying you can never get one, but someone's best bet is to try to negotiate in the PUD process rather than go the variance route. Because as Amanda's saying, like, that's dictated by the legislature and our courts on the standards that have to be met, and it's very narrow. So it has to be a very odd site to get a variance.
One of the things I looked at is I did see something, Metro, they were talking about these massive parking lots that have become somewhat abandoned. You know, the building closes down or gets tore down, they got these massive, and all the rainwater, you know, the groundwater, it's a problem. So I got to look at that, and one of the things I thought about, you know, I would say if somebody came to us with a 40-acre R3 rezoning, what's the chances they're ever going to get that rezoned to R3? I mean, because you're almost going to force them to go to a PUD because we don't have as much control with that R3, and that's such a large tract.
Well, they would have to meet this new legislation on the wetland protection, on the open space, and the parking. I mean, that's not impossible, but it's a lot more challenging whereas if you go to the HUD process.
And that's kind of my thinking on this massive, like if you had a 100-door unit, you know, by design, we're almost going to force you to go PUD. I just don't see you getting approved for a massive R3 anything. You might get 3 or 4 acres, but you're probably not going to get 30, 40, even with me. So, you know, I don't think we'll ever have an R3, you know, that's going to have that kind of parking, because I don't think you're ever going to get an R3 that size.
And I mean, I don't ever want to like prejudge things because I don't know what's going to come in and what isn't. But if it's something of that magnitude, developers are going to want to have that flexibility. I mean, that's why these things are coming in, these amendments, and a lot of, you know, what can be classified as housekeeping, but that's why these amendments are coming in the way that they are. Because, yes, they're straightening out some of the issues we've had in the past, but they're also kind of starting to guide where, okay, you get the flexibility, but it's not just free reign either. So, again, the idea is balance, right? So I can't imagine if we had a development coming in like that I personally would not go immediately into, hey, check out Article 6.
Anything else? We'll put it off for second reading. Next in the packet, just a second reading ordinance to revise zoning ordinance, Article 2, definition. Article 3, by adding section 3.140, open space standards, and Article 5, residential density, and repealing any ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith. You don't tell us what that is. That's a lot of language there.
I'll take this one, Mayor. So this is, as y'all saw last month, as you recall, this body had a couple of amendments that went to the Planning Commission earlier this month, and they unanimously recommended the changes you made. So this will be for second reading, public hearing. But just to remind you all of your changes, you altered the density in R1 from 1 to 1.5. You altered the front setbacks in R2 and R3. You increased it back to 25. And then kept R2's density, and you altered R3's density from 5 to 6 dwelling units per acre. And you saw a table last time, so the table in the back of this is updated based upon that 1.5, 3, and 6 density numbers. And as Jeff pointed out to me the other day, it's actually mathematically symmetrical as the doubling each time, 1.5 to 3 to 6. I don't know if y'all are thinking of that, but it's nice and symmetrical. So you can see what the old R1, R2, R3 would look like, or currently is, and then what that is. So it's a decrease in density in R1, an increase in R2, and a decrease in R3. But there have been no other changes. The PC didn't have any other recommended changes. It was as you sent it down, it's coming back to you, fully recommended by the Planning Commission.
Sure satisfies my OCD.
Unless you wanna make it like 1.49 units.
I don't think I can handle that.
Okay, so we'll have a second reading on this, in a public hearing Tuesday night. Any more discussion on this one? Moving on down to number 7 in the packet, discuss first reading ordinance to rezone the following for adjoining lot at the corner of White Brook Road and Jordan Circle. Map 099, 099B, Group A, parcel 38, 99B, Group A, parcel 40, 99B, Group A, parcel 39. From R1, low density residential, to an R2, medium density residential. The applicant has offered a self-imposed condition to reconfigure the current form for non-conforming R1 zone lots into 3 conforming R2 zone lots. Everybody knows, y'all, it's on Jordan Circle and White Brook Road. Of course, it's always look at it, it's where Rebecca Langley. Hilton lives, so anyway, part of it. This will be the first reading. It passed the planning commission and recommended on to council.
It's probably a stupid question, these are vacant, right?
No, there's one house on them in a garage.
One house and then a garage on the second lot.
Right.
You know, which is which.
Sound like this is a lot of tree canopy.
Right on the corner.
So, the first one is the house, and the third one is the garage.
So the garage is on this one, is on this 9.42. And then the house is on this 40, the corner lot. And the applicant is here.
Yeah, I mean, and the way I understood this is, you've got the 4 non-conforming lots. This was created prior to zoning, and this is, the applicant's going to seek to convert these 4 lots into 3 conforming lots, which we always like conforming, and that's why there's a self-imposed condition that upon rezoning, they will re-subdivide to turn those 4 lots into 3. And really, and if I'm correct, Amanda, I think you have the map there, that back lot is just getting divided up amongst the front 3. So they're becoming larger and becoming conforming.
There's really nothing he can do with them right now, because with them being zoned R1, they're not big enough to do anything.
Now, this would fall under the old zoning laws and stuff.
The application came in before you passed the new ordinance, so it's under all.
Now, all the surrounding areas, those are R1 as of right now, but they're all not conforming R1, am I correct in that?
Most of them are not.
We're talking about Jordan Circle, right?
Right.
I would say that most of those, they might be on that, but
And
it's an old zone.
It did come to the planning commission, there are a couple R2 lots further down in there, so it's not
R1.
by itself, but there isn't R2 right next to it.
Before I open my mouth, would you mind if I hear what our planner's recommendations and thoughts are?
Sure. So again, this is one of these interesting older parts of town where you've got a real mix of lots that don't fit nicely into any one particular zoning designation. You have an applicant that's coming in that does not want a steep departure from zoning designation. He's still wanting to stay within the residential designation. He's offering a self-imposed condition, as has been discussed, in terms of making the size of the lots conforming. That's always an improvement. You know, as a planner, it kind of makes me, you know, a little squirmy that there's no other parcels immediately adjacent to it that would share the same zoning designation, but then again, it is staying within the same class. There are, as has been discussed, and I think I heard the same conversation on that end, that there are several parcels that are just non-conforming in this area. And until somebody comes in and starts consolidating, and we're going to be dealing consistently in this area with this issue. There are some other R2 zone property at the end of the cul-de-sac. That's what this exhibit shows. That's what this dark blue is. By GIS measurement, it's about 1,500 feet away. So from a strict application, is it immediately adjacent? No. But does it clean up an area? It does. It makes a non-conforming situation better. It's still within the same class.
Now, with opening up R2, that opens up plexus. With us looking at the old setbacks and such as that, is it more inclined to be single families in those 3 lots, or is it possible to draw some plexus in those 3 lots?
I think the intent is that there's going to be, did he say anything about, I think the intent is to keep
We have the applicant here if anybody wants to ask a
I thought he
question.
said he was gonna keep the house and look to build on the other 2 lots, but he can speak for himself.
Well, I mean, I have massive respect for that, quite obviously. But it's my understanding, as far as our role and our job, is to assume the maximum density is allowed. And so that's why I'm also asking feasibility. So let's say, God forbid, something happened and he has to divest from these properties. He gives it to Joe down the road. What can Joe feasibly do with this property? See, that's my question. Based on obviously we're shifting gears on our zoning laws, but based on our old zoning laws, could he come in and put duplexes on all of these 3 properties for a total of 6 doors? That's my question.
dimensionally, is what you're saying.
Yes,
If it was
dimensionally, is that possible?
I think with the,
Because I don't have any problem.
I don't have a survey.
I don't think, but to your point, anybody who owned this after zoning would be able to do anything that's permitted in R2 by right.
Right.
There's not any other self-imposed condition other than they're going to combine the 4 lots into 3.
And see, that has been an ongoing difficulty I've had with sometimes of R2, which is, even though I think our new zoning is a step in the right direction, I think a tighter single family would fit fine with this area, but I don't necessarily think moving towards plexus would be a good fit for this area. And even with our new laws, that creates availability there. So that's where I'm just kind of scratching my head. That makes any sense.
I have a question. Is it within our purview to postpone it until item number 6 is passed?
So even if number 6 passes, it's based upon when the application came in, so it came in before you passed it. So you can delay this as long as you want because the application came in a couple months ago now. It's as whatever the laws were at the date of application. So.
I think what you said, Carl, I do see that. I think, this is what's going to happen. I mean, I can just tell you guys. So we own one of the lots that's down the street from R2. Yes, we could put the duplex or whatever you want to call those things, HBR. We won't, because we don't want to be the first goldfish in the pond, so to speak. Because I don't know how they're going to sell now, what the profit margin is, and so we're going to do a single-family home there, a fairly large single-family home. But somebody's eventually going to jump out there and try, and if it's successful, then every R2 lot, because lots are so scarce, are going to be a prime candidate. I mean, they're going to be chomping at the bit. Yes, and go ahead.
You own the R2 lot,
down the street, one of them.
because he owned the R2 lots when they were rezoned, so he sold them to you.
No, so he kept the house, he's remodeling the house, and we, H&H, bought the lot. But, like I say, we're not willing to try those. I prefer not to see those at the end of the street either, I'll be honest with you, because I don't know how they're going to do. But, like you said, and we've all said, it's, you know, once you do it, however,
That's just my rub, because I think tight-fitting single-family fit fine.
well, and
That
I'll
works the
go,
area, but
like this whole neighborhood, in my opinion, needs to try to work toward R2. That's just my opinion, because none of them are in compliance. They may not be.
The width of the roads, though.
Do what now?
The width of the roads, you can barely pass two cars.
Well, and so the good thing about, and I agree with you, the good thing about the subdivision is most of it's already built out. So even though the lots are tiny, they would have to literally tear them down to do anything different if you made it R2.
someone that needs a rehab or call.
Well, you know, and so I do see, you know, I don't like the way this is, because what you've got right now, you've got a garage on its own lot, you know, which is a terrible, terrible thing as far as zoning. I mean, you know, how you gonna tell somebody you can't live in it? I mean, you got a lot, you got a structure. I would love to see this happen and get cleaned up, but,
In my mind, trying to do something like this makes more sense to me than the commercial to R1 that was done last month.
Old Hagertown. Well, and I think, you know, I would agree with you there. One of the reasons I was for that is because we built so many houses out in Hagertown. I mean, I think if we were gonna make that a commercial district, we should have done that before we built all those houses and approved that new cul-de-sac development that's gonna go in there. But I agree with you, this is a much, in my opinion, a much better rezoning than that. But I do agree with Carl. I mean, there's a possibility that you could, you know, not that they'll be terrible. I mean, they're going to be, you know, if we built one, it would be top of the line, because we're going to get the most bang for your buck. I mean, that's the, you know, I personally, you know, as a contractor, I would be very hesitant to be the first one to build one of those, because I don't know that people down here are going to embrace that.
Mayor, if I may, I'm sorry, Councilor Glover, I misspoke, because there's no pending plat or permit. This is first reading for this item. If this body were to pass item 6 on Tuesday night, then whatever this gets zoned to will be under the new zoning laws. There's only vesting if you come in with a plat or a permit. So unless y'all are going to deviate and not pass item 6, if y'all were to vote to zone this R2, it'd be under the new R2 that y'all can talk about.
The density, the building.
The density, the open
setbacks, all that.
space, all of that would be in play. So, I mean, you'll know more because you won't have second reading on this rezoning until after you know what happens with item 6 on Tuesday night. So I know again, we like people trying to bring lots into conformity. That's good, right? That's a positive thing. But the 1,700 square foot thing is about, if y'all pass it, that's going to not be a thing, right? And one thing we've looked at, I don't have the answer yet, and I will Tuesday. This is an old subdivision, so there is an argument that you can get a building permit by right, even if it's not conforming. You are limited to the setbacks that exist, so that building envelope could be very small, but you can't prevent someone from getting one building permit in a non-conforming lot if it was created predating your zoning ordinance.
So the request for action form that we have has Thomas Jefferson Hendrickson III listed as the property owner and the one doing the reclaim. Is he still currently the owner? And is he in the room? Because I don't see Mr. Hendrickson.
I don't know if he's the current owner. He's who signed the application.
Okay.
I can find out.
This is the property owner.
Yeah, so Jeff is the owner, so we've done a number of projects in a partnership, Jeff and I, and sometimes he owns, sometimes I own the property. this goes back to the same intent when we did the other two properties, just to create a safety net there, to allow that flexibility. I mean, so what Carl's asking is, I think it does allow, the setbacks would allow, the third lot that abuts White Bluff Road becomes more of a challenge because of the shape of it and how you would, but it would allow, under the current ordinance at least, detached duplexes, on those lots. And so, and that's always been our thought process with Jordan Circle, is trying to buy those lots and trying to clean that area up and infill into the old neighborhoods. That's what it takes, it takes some flexibility to get out there on that limb and make those investments. So like the other two lots, the house wasn't in a condition where it had to be torn down, so that it kind of eliminated the need for that contingency of, because when I did that, I had two lots, and what I paid for it was possible, if I had to tear the house down, I could still come out okay if there were 4 envelopes there. And it just didn't shake out that way, and so, there was no need to add that extra density, for that particular spot. So,
Am I reading this right, that each lot proposed can be around about 17,000 square feet?
yeah, so that was what we had told the planning commission, we would replat those to make sure that they met the 17,000 square feet. I guess if we were, I guess on the wrong assumption that we had to meet the old zoning ordinance.
Well, it's the current, it hasn't changed
Yeah.
yet. That makes it, I know it's hard.
Yeah, that's
when
what
you're
we thought,
applying.
we were working to try to make sure we're getting in and fixing it under that, so.
So, I'm playing this out again on some assumptions. If item 6 passes Tuesday night,
You got 3 doors per acre.
you got 3 doors per acre, but based upon my very napkin math, I think there's only gonna be 1 dwelling unit per lot. I don't think you're gonna be able to get 2. And remember, we're redefining the definition where a duplex is 2, because it's 2 living spaces. So I would wanna double check that, don't take it with a grain of salt right now, but I don't think even if it is R2, it changes the setbacks. But I believe the math works out to where it would only be 1 dwelling unit per lot, but we need to double check.
Good job. Okay, so this will come up for first reading Tuesday night. We will swear a new officer, Austin Wilson, Tuesday night. Streets and sidewalks, discuss procedure to change road names.
All right, Mayor, this came up, I'll kind of back up for a second. The town of White Bluff, and specifically the council, has what's called plenary authority over the public rights of way. You have to keep them free from obstruction and in good repair. You also have the ability to name any non-state road anything you want. When a development comes in, those blue signs indicate it's not a public road yet, it's still under private or developer control. They can call it whatever they want. Traditionally, the sign name stays the same. I know there's been some discussion about, can we change that? The answer is yes. What is involved? We will have to work with E911 to make sure they have updated records of all lots of record on the section of road renamed. Because if they send an ambulance out to 102 Smith Street, and they're looking for the sign, and it's been changed to Jones Street, you don't want to create that problem. So we got to work with E911, and then we do have to make sure any lending documents of record on that road are updated with the address. I have never done that second part, so that's an unknown for me, but it's just, it's informing everyone. It's not, would pass it by resolution, but we have to take that resolution and send it to a few people. And make sure other records were updated. So it's a little bit more than just a resolution, but it's not a Herculean effort. But point is, the council has the authority to change street names. We would need to know what section. In terms of Middle Tennessee, especially Nashville loves changing street names along a thoroughfare, so if you want to get into that, you can. But we would need to know where and what we'll change the name to, and it'd be a simple majority vote of the council.
You know, my issue with the whole thing is what keeps anybody else from coming before this council and saying, I don't like my road name. I mean, you know, it's ludicrous, it really is.
Well, it has happened in White Bluff before, because I personally live on a street that's been renamed because someone chose.
But we can open that door,
Do that.
and that's what's gonna start happening.
And some of the larger jurisdictions have full procedures on street name change, I think maybe because of that. But again, the council has authority to change it. It's really in your full discretion. And again, we don't have procedures or guidelines where you need a petition that has a majority of the people on the road saying we'd like the name change. We don't have any of that. So it's kind of, again, carte blanche for what you want. And it's just another.
Is there a particular, I wasn't here for any of this, is there a particular road, is there something offensive going on? Is there offensive or what?
I think Councilman Glover, and I can't remember if there was anybody else, but asked me to look at what the procedure was, but I think there was something, I think la-la, or there was some odd word out there.
But Lala is also, that has come up as well, because is it actually Lala, or is it supposed to be pronounced differently? Are people gonna know that?
I've been told it's Lola.
It's his mother's name. He's named it after his mother, he told me that.
Well, I
So,
understand
yeah,
that
no.
people who are in White Bluff or people who are new to White Bluff are not gonna know the history behind that. And so at some point, you have to ask, is that being disrespectful of the community where you're building this development?
To name it after your mother?
Well, to have something that people are not gonna know the history behind.
I
You know,
don't
they
know,
live over there
I
on
don't
that
know,
Lala Road.
I don't know the history behind most of the roads
Well,
here, and we've got
Hill
some.
Road, named after your family, Williams Drive,
Yes,
named after
that's
my
right.
family.
Denny Biden.
Denny
Yeah,
Bobby.
Yeah, I just, I guess, I can't understand this.
Well, to change a street name because
Somebody
you
doesn't
don't
like
like
the person.
somebody, just, I mean, again, we're opening the door for anybody that comes in to say, you know what, I don't like the name of my street.
I've been asked by several people to have it changed, the street in question. And also, I've seen the drawing of the original plan, and it was to be named Creek Bottom.
We have a creek bottom, what's that?
It was a continuation of the Creek Bottom.
Maybe so, I'm not questioning it there, but I don't remember that. My thing is, and I'm just gonna tell you how, I mean, if I buy property, okay, I'm gonna go, this has happened time and time again, Danny Weed bought property out here. Every street out there, and you live there, every street there is named after somebody in his family. You probably don't even know his family. Doesn't matter, he named the street after everybody in his family out in Bell Forge. And then, same thing when Marty built, I'm saying Marty, Spook.
White Bluff
When
Hills.
White Bluff
is
Hills is
also
named after everybody in Spook's family. I just think,
No, there's no Spook.
I just think that whoever buys the land and develops it, it's their land, it's their property. And that's my feeling on it. I don't think, we could, if this happens, well, we could just start going around now, just rename Snoot Road, Dog Catcher Road out yonder. I mean, we got some roads here that, but it's been that way, and it was named, it was everything. I don't care what road I live on. And when I go to buy a house, I don't think, I'm gonna say, I'll buy this house if you change the name. I can't imagine, I don't know. Well, what have you got, Charlton
I would
Avenue,
say
Snoot Road?
if the residents, majority of the residents own the road,
Own
want
the
the name
road.
changed, fine. If it's not the residents, I have no interest, because they're the ones that actually live on the road. If they want the road name changed, and the majority of them will sign saying so, I'm good with that. Beyond that, because there's a lot of people I don't like,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna start going down there and I'm gonna change that, because I don't like him.
And then when the next council comes in, well, wait a minute, I like it, we're gonna change it back. I mean, after a while, it
I think
gets
it has to be
ridiculous.
up to the people on the road, I really do.
Yeah.
I would add one more caveat to it. I personally am not in favor of changing it based on a negative. I would be okay on a positive, like let's say, there is a road of a pillar of the community who passed away or something, and the will of this town was to rename that road after that pillar of the community. I'd be in favor of that. But so for a positive, I'm okay changing the name of the road, or like you said, if we had the whole street, change my name, it's fine, but just on I would not be inclined based off the negative, because like you see your point, it's like, where does it end? And then we get into tearing down statues and all that. I just don't like going down that road, so.
Just because you don't like somebody.
Well, this road in question, the subdivision, they changed the name of the subdivision.
Mhm.
It was,
And I wondered how that was going to affect the Boy Scouts with their Eagle Scout. I mean, you got a lot of things. Eagle is the American icon.
I know, but Eagle's Nest is Hitler's hideout.
Eagle's Nest, but if you look across the United States, there are a lot of things called Eagle's Nest. I never in my mind even put those things together. I don't know that much about Hitler and his history. My God, I don't want to. But, to think that we're naming that, well, we didn't name it, but to think. And I do think the name, the people then that purchased it, I guess they still have the right in their land to change it. And I like Maple Valley. I think that's a beautiful name. I'm just all for Shady Oak. We got a beautiful, with a street Shady Oak, because there's some oaks down there. There's maple trees. Yeah, I like that.
Well, there's no trees there now.
I wish there was some
They
tree
clear cut the whole thing.
We had the woodland protection, maybe we would
Yeah,
have.
it would have been, yeah, right.
But as it is in this situation, there's just one company that has a lien, so that's only one entity we have to talk to about that. And then the 911 is just one road.
And then all the people that live there have got to go and change all their addresses and everything. Yeah.
The post office.
You get post
Well,
office.
There's only like
It-
5 or 6.
Yeah, there's not that many people.
I think more, I rode through there the other night, I think a lot more are there now, which I'm hoping, I hate to see a development anywhere.
Well,
But there were a lot of lights on, I guess, and the
Just-
garbage cans out, and trucks parked there now.
well, here's an FYI for
Okay,
everybody. My daughter has leased one of those,
I hear they're nice,
and,
I haven't been in
well,
one.
they're nice if you don't want air conditioning.
Yeah.
Because they undersized, they got one outside unit
Uh-huh,
and 2 inside units. And the outside unit will not keep up if you want to keep it below, was it 68 degrees or something, or 70 degrees.
70,
As it is now, my daughter does not have air conditioning in the bottom
yeah.
story. And they cannot get anybody to come out and fix it. So, just a
Yeah.
heads up.
That's a bad thing. My granddaughter's fixing to rent an apartment out here behind the car wash. And she's just bought an electric car. And she's trying to just get the plug put in her house. So, but hey, things like that happen, and, they'll need to get it fixed, Yeah.
But to your point, you were talking about when a developer buys the land,
Mm-hmm.
they own it, and they should be able to name it. But at a certain point, they're selling all these lots, and they're asking the city to take over the street.
Right.
And it is a part of the community at that point. So at that point, it no longer belongs to the developer, it belongs to the individual property owners, and it's part of the community. And
So what if you've got 10 individual property owners on that street, and you got all 10 of them, and they all want a different name? What do you do then?
Well,
Yeah, you got that's right. I mean, you can't.
But what I would like to see, what I would like to
somebody
see,
own it and name it.
what I would like to see the town of White Bluff do in the future is move away from naming streets after their family members and maybe go into something more standardized to where it is more object-based and less people-based. So that we don't have streets named Lala, which is after someone's mother, but other people are not going to know that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that'll keep people from buying houses there because that street's named Lala?
No, I just think that people are going to get mocked because they live on, what is it, Lala Loop?
Okay.
The only thing I'll add, Mayor, is obviously consistency is important in this context. We don't want swapping back and forth, but we don't have a policy, and I think that kind of a lot of great ideas have been on how do we approach this have been stated. Majority of lot owners on that road, I've seen that in other communities. You know, y'all just need to decide how you want to do it and make a motion on Tuesday night, but if y'all just want to talk about it and not vote, that's fine. If you want to move forward with the resolution, we'll need to draft one. Or if you want to say, let's go ahead and state our policy, let's get this in writing. Whatever y'all decide, I think Jeff and I need some direction on what you want us to bring in terms of that. So that's just something to think about till Tuesday.
I'm kind of mad. I'm taking it personal. My family on that farm out there, Gill Road, I wanted a street named after me, and it didn't get named when the rest, so no. So I'm just taking all this personal.
Yeah, we have a street that we
Now,
want
we
to change the
can
name.
go out there and find the street. Oh, man, no, I'm just kidding.
She
I'm
don't know,
kidding.
can change it to Linda.
I'm very kidding.
There are a couple jurisdictions that say no human names.
I think for future purposes, maybe we need a policy in place, but I think that we need to leave the streets alone that are named right now. That's just my opinion.
Because if you put a policy in place and the developer's dedicating over the street, they would have to adhere to that policy, and there hasn't been one. So a developer can pick whatever they want because there's been no limitations. Maybe that's a good thing, but I think that's led to some of what you're seeing now. And if you say, hey, be more, don't pick this category, go pick this category, or we're not accepting dedication, they will absolutely make sure they do that. So, something to think about.
It's just, I have a different perspective on it. My family owns land down in Baldwin County in Alabama, and my grandfather was the first spring irrigation to the whole county. He literally owned almost all of Summerdale, the town, as farmland. There's very little of the property left, and my mom's been considering turning that to a shopping center or a neighborhood or something, and she would want to name it after her dad, like Wynn Farms. That's what she, and I'm like, so the idea of saying we would put a policy in place, so to speak, that my mom couldn't dedicate that to her father, who literally owned almost the whole town, I just have a problem with that. I'm like, you know, so I know that down in Alabama, the principle here is the same. So I personally have a little difficulty with that because I wouldn't want to put that law in place that would have inhibited my mother from naming that after her father. So that's just kind of the way I feel about it.
Well, I go back to, I guess, property rights owners. If you want to control how people name the lake, if you want to do all that, they're the ones that buying the land, they're taking the risk. Right, Brian? You're buying the land, you're taking the risk, not by me, not Scott, Stephanie, none of us. So you, in my opinion, you should have the right to name those streets, not us. And if I want that right, then what I need to do is buy the land myself, and then I own it, and I can name it whatever I want.
Do we have the right now to approve the chosen road names? Like if they did come up with something that we thought was offensive, do we have the right to decline that?
So we would need to add it into the dedication process. We do have some procedures in place. But no, you technically don't, but we could make it work, but it would be better if you had, hey, we're only going to accept dedication of your road if. Right now, we're looking at, is it a good road? And from an engineering standpoint, we've never really focused on the name, but if y'all wanted to add that as a layer,
I was just curious.
We can add that.
If you named it Hitler's Alley, you know, do we have to accept that? You know, I mean, it just popped in my head. I'm like, that's
Well, like your
not.
daddy's name Hitler.
I mean,
honestly, you know, y'all don't have to accept dedication until you're ready. Again, it's based upon procedures in that once you've completed the road, we need to reduce your performance bond or letter of credit to maintenance and make it a public road at that point and make sure you didn't hide anything for a year and then you're released.
Right.
That's been the focus. But if this body wants to direct us to put some language together, it would go probably in the subdivision regulations. And that would stay at PC, so it'd be a directive, hey, y'all look at this, that'd be great, thank you. That's one way of doing it, or you could just have a council-type policy, resolution, I don't think you want to put it in the town code, but maybe you could, on what's acceptable to this body. Knowing that a council 10 years from now could have a 180 opinion on that. And, you know, there are a lot of municipal bodies out there that already have pretty robust policies. If you want us to shoot some to you to look at, we're happy to do that too. We don't need to create this from scratch, but again, a lot of different points made tonight. We need direction, so.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm interested in too. We will decide Tuesday night
The direction.
if we even want to do this.
Or what is this?
Yeah, well, if we want to put a policy together to rename roads. That's what we can decide Tuesday night. And until then.
Pick a road you want to come back with the resolution the next month, whatever it is, small, big, nothing, we need to know. Correct, Mayor?
I do know that there was a phone call made, and it was about one of our teams that went missing years ago. It's been, oh my goodness, 25, 30 years ago. And all of a sudden, and the family's not even here anymore. They're gone, you know. So someone called not too long ago, and it was a good call. They were doing it out of goodness of their heart. You understand that. They all of a sudden wanted to rename the street after this girl. Well, the family's gone. We had never had that request before, and that to me is just another. I mean, how many times are you going to rename the street? I don't know. I do know that people put them in honor and in memory, and I like that. I like that. You can have a sign up.
Metro Nashville did the opposite. They said no individual street names anymore, but they have a whole process for the honorary street names. So sometimes you'll see the green sign, and then there's like a blue sign that's got special lining around it to honor somebody, but that's not anyone's address.
Yeah.
So
that's
the opposite of kind of
yeah.
what we've been talking about here, but a lot of different angles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we get this ball rolling? So
motion on Tuesday night for
Motion on
something.
Tuesday night.
Majority of the
Majority
council will.
wants to do it.
So to have the name of the road that we're going to accept responsibility for, we need to, somebody needs to approve it, either PC or us. So how do we do that?
So, from what I've heard tonight, and there may be more options, I would say either come Tuesday night with a road or roads you want to rename and see what the council vote is on that. We would have to come back with a formal resolution, but I'd say that would be something for the council that's, you know, in the more immediate picking roads. If you want a policy generally, I think discuss what you want, make it a motion. If you want it to be considered by the Planning Commission as an amendment to the subdivision regulations on the dedication process, bring that motion forward. Feel free to call me, we can workshop language, but I kind of like, personally, the third one, is if you're going to dedicate, the best time to do it is when the road's dedicated over. The year or 10 years after the fact is messier, right? I would like to see it happen when E911 addresses are assigned and the deeds of trust and mortgages are going down. That would be best if that's going to happen at all, just from my perspective, and I'm seeing some nodding out here from town staff, but y'all decide what y'all want to do. But I think if you want to go ahead and address a road, tell us, and we can get something together for the next meeting. If you want a policy from this body, we can try to make that work on how to change names. And then if you want and these are not mutually exclusive, and if you want the subdivision regulations changed on the dedication process, we can explore that.
So the dedication process isn't when we finally accept the road, it's when,
Yes.
well, a lot of times there's people already moved in before the dedication.
But they would know it because it's in the subdivision regulations, and if you say, here's a category of names that are not permitted, or we won't accept it, they're not going to pick in that category when they put up those blue signs.
Well, do we have to have anything like that? We just can't say it has to be approved by this governing body?
Good, yeah. I mean, I think that's maybe delving into the weeds, but if you would like all road names to be at part of the plat and approved by the planning commission when the plat comes in. We could even do it then. I don't know of other jurisdictions that do that, but, I mean, that seems a little early in the process. But again, we can workshop ideas on when it needs to happen. But if it's in the regs, I'm going to bet that any developer will look at that, and we'll let them know, and that way it'll be within the parameters that were set.
Well, it just makes sense to me that it needs to happen before, you know, people move in and people, and 911 is brought to the attention of the road and all that.
Yeah. No, when I say at the dedication, we wouldn't accept dedication unless they would need to make sure it's done
Right,
earlier.
so the builder would have to be savvy enough to pick up on that.
Well, it's in the regs, and I'm sure it would be something that would be, if that's what the will of the PC or this body, I'm sure that would be told to applicants. By the way, make sure your street names are whatever that policy is.
Whatever people want them to be. I mean, how are you gonna know? Who's gonna rename this? I guess, you know, I know which one you're talking about. Who's going to rename it? I mean, maybe what you want to rename it, I don't like.
Well,
Then do I have any say in it? Who's gonna rename it?
Mayor, if I may, just for this one, it's the initial naming I think we're talking about. Renaming's a different thing that we can certainly get to, but again, I think if you want to avoid a problem, earlier on is better. And so this is the initial naming of the street, I think, is what Councilman Glover was talking about. I don't want to speak.
That's what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah. And I think we would need to get together and figure out when's the best time to make that happen and how we make sure applicants know, right? And that can happen. We've done that with hundreds of other regulations, so.
And also, I have another question. Is this going to cost the city any money? No?
No, they put up
I mean,
the
I
blue
know
signs
there's a
and they put up
process
the
they've
green
got
signs.
to go through. I don't know who incurs the money, the expenses for it.
That wouldn't change.
Okay.
It's just the name on the sign. You're still going to have to get the sign regardless.
Okay, so the post office, they have to take care of that, the people with the post office?
Again, I'm talking about the initial naming.
Oh, okay.
In the terms of changing the name, that's a different
That's
conversation.
what I think's under discussion here.
Okay. For that one, it's on the town to make sure that is changed. E911, and that trickles down to the post office because they use E911 addresses, is going to be the biggest one, and then any deeds of trust, any instruments of record may have to be updated, so that's to be checked on that, and that's on the town.
That's on the town? Yeah, okay.
For changing the name.
For changing the name, yeah, I think that's mainly what we're talking about here.
For specific roads, but if it was going to go on the sub-regs at the PC
Oh, and
level,
I understand.
that would be initial.
Yeah, initially, that wouldn't cost you anything.
Correct.
I want it known or said that I would be against any road that is offensive, that I would not want my children to come by and see the name of that road. I have a whole completely different look at that.
Like
But if it's
Knock
not-
Road, you wouldn't like
the what?
The Knock Road.
I don't know what that means, it's over my head. I'm
It
too old
does
for
sound
it.
offensive.
Yeah, but that would be true, somebody else would tell me, hey, you don't wanna name that, you know, yeah. I'm against offensive names. But if it's not offensive, I don't think it's my business, but anyway.
Who decides if it's offensive?
I think society, we all would know society if it's offensive. Vulgar offensive, I guess you would say. Okay, what we did, going on?
All right, so the last item that was asked to be added was on-street parking discussion, so I figured it's the best place to start is our current parking municipal code section, which I was pointing out to Jeff before the meeting started, that first paragraph really shows the date of these parking regs that you can't leave a vehicle unattended without first setting the brakes. We still do that. Stopping the motor, removing the ignition key, and turning the front wheels of the vehicle toward the nearest curb or gutter. I don't think people do that normally anymore, but so we do have parking regulations, and the one you're probably most interested in, if you turn to the second page, is 15-604, the where prohibited. So the first line up there says where there's any sign. And so that's probably what we're going to circle back to here in just a second. And then you can see the other 11 places currently that you are not permitted to park on a sidewalk. That came up in discussion last time, that used to be a thing, and now you cannot park on a sidewalk. In front of driveways, public or private, intersection, fire hydrant, etc. So I think in terms of what this body was indicating to me that you wanted, I think we have one of two options. If the any sign placed would probably be the most powerful. So either, number one, this body should designate an individual with discretion to put up no parking signs where there are issues, right? You're responding kind of rapidly to that, but you're delegating that authority. The other option is to add a line to this code. And then this body, by resolution, it's not two readings, just a resolution, can say, hey, we've heard about this for a few months. We're going to pass a resolution that says this section of, I heard Diane Loop earlier, Diane Loop is going to be no parking on both sides of the road, or no parking on the right side of the road, or whatever it is. And that's just a resolution, and that's a directive to go put out the sign. And maybe years later, they're like, actually, that's not that big of an issue. It's just like you would change a speed limit type. So either designate someone to put up a sign, or by resolution, pick an area from time to time that the council thinks this is a bad area. Now, the second option, you're going to have a delay. Maybe there's just 2 weeks of really bad parking out there, and there's nothing that can be done. I'll give the caveat, though, you don't have that thin area authority over roads. Roads can't be obstructed. They can't be obstructed. You have to allow normal traffic. And if they're, I always use the example of someone parks sideways on White Bluff Road, we're not going to wait till the next council meeting to deal with it. That's going to get towed off that night. So,
When you say you can't create an obstruction, are you talking about where 2 cars can pass, or if it's down to 1 car?
it's not perfectly clear in case law, but you have to allow the flow of traffic. What is traffic? If it's normally 2 cars, I think but you're going to have a problem ticketing people without signs. So that's why I'll always bring it back to signs. Do y'all want to designate someone to erect signs where there's issues, or from time to time pass a resolution that says this section needs to be no parking fully, no parking on one side of the road, or times. I mean, and not to get into the alternate side of the street parking scenario, but you could say, no parking except at night, or whatever. It's up to this body, but this is what you have on the books before you, this is 2 pages. It's up to y'all to tell us how you want that addressed.
What about this number 11 here, and there's 15604?
Yeah, that, the alongside of the curb painted, we don't have curbs everywhere.
Can curb be the edge of the road?
It wouldn't be a curb.
So could we paint the edge of the road instead of putting a sign?
I would want to add a section 12 if we're doing that, but yes, you could.
Could that be considered a sign?
Absolutely.
So,
The issues that I'm seeing occur, there's not a curb there. There's nothing there. It's the road and it's people's front yards. So are you saying we paint someone's front yard?
no, just the edge of the road.
Are you talking about like a 2-inch strip or?
Whatever common to be done, street.
Are you talking about what you see in some areas, especially commercial, where it's like yay wide, kind of occasional hash striping, and it says no parking ever so often? No? Okay.
Just like like on the highway, you see a yellow stripe down the edge of the road.
On these roads, we don't even have stripes.
Right.
Park does. Park does.
Park Street? Yeah, but
There's a couple of roads with a stripe down the middle and on the edges.
But I don't know if that line's going to, well,
It's just a
it's not a no parking sign, is my point.
Well, I mean, but if you designate it, like it says here, along any curve, or you can amend that and say, or edge of the road, something like that. It's just simple. I hate to see a bunch of no parking signs littering up the town.
But there's a whole lot more to painting the edges of all the roads than there is to putting up a sign.
Well, you'd have to put up a whole bunch of signs.
I thought we had discussed just saying that in general, people would not be able to park on the street, on certain types of streets, like collector, arterial, whatever they break down into.
So that is an option. So let's talk about that one for a second, because I've been waffling on that one candidly. I like giving people notice, right? And obviously, this body passing a law saying, let's say, no parking on residential streets, so that's all subdivisions, right? I worry about everybody knowing, and I talked to the chief a little bit ago, not to put words in his mouth, but like, we would have to be in a pretty long warning period. I think we would only be comfortable not actually issuing tickets for a while, have to get people to use, like the sidewalk example of, you just gotta start coaxing people off the sidewalk. That's simpler, to say just no parking in residential streets, but it's up to the council if y'all want. That's a lot of no parking. And you saw, we updated our parking standards because of parking issues, and I don't know if that will exacerbate issues or not. I don't know if y'all have thoughts on that, but that's a lot of no parking.
So something like, give it a 6-month swearing-in period, and then after that, you give it
$50 fine probably would be, unless y'all wanted to set the maximum, unless y'all wanted to set a lower amount.
So you can set a, go put a little pink sticker on the windshield that says, as of this date, it's not permitted to park.
I don't know, without the police chief weighing in, like what our exact procedure would be. If y'all are setting the law saying, here's what's legal and what's not. And again, I think if you did something blanket like that, to start it off, there would have to be a multi-month warning period. But then, at the end of that, it would be tickets, right? And I don't know what we would have to do to be ready for tickets, but it would be, it would just be our standard citation probably.
I'd rather see a multiple offender, do it once, you get a warning, do it a second time.
So I did ask the chief about that, if there's an officer on patrol, to be able, like if he sees a car, can he determine if a warning was given or not out in the field, and the answer is no.
Right.
So that is a limitation. I like that idea, but that is a limitation on that. You're not going to be able to pull up like, ooh, I wonder if this guy's got any warnings on parkings. Do I give him a ticket, or is this going to be a first offense warning type thing? They wouldn't know. That's why the time period would be more.
Right.
6 months, no one's getting it. After that, everyone's getting a ticket.
Right.
So.
Well, I have a question before we go through the trouble, and I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus. It's been a couple of years ago, so they probably don't work there anymore, but I got a seatbelt ticket, right? I go to Charlotte, I had a seatbelt ticket. Lady looks at me like I'm crazy for paying the ticket. She pulls out a lot of tickets about, and I kid you not, double-handed, and she said, I said, why didn't anybody pay this? She said, there's nothing we can really do. It's not a moving violation. Whether or not that's factual, I don't know. She said, you're not going to get a warrant, you're not going to get, they just don't come and they don't pay them. So we're going to write a bunch of tickets and nobody's going to pay, or not.
Yeah, let's say I live in East Tennessee and I just decide to park on our roads, I get a ticket and I move on.
That's
a good question. Because this is not a rule of the road. This is more akin to a code violation. And it's not tied to property, which is a lot easier for us to deal with. It's a moving piece of personal property. So you probably would only have success against residents. But, I mean, these are some wrinkles we would have to work through, but no, that's a good point. I don't know why Charlotte does that.
Well, like I said, and maybe that's not actually factual, but I said, you can't tell me that none of these people are paying, and she's like, nobody ever comes to pay these. And she was like, because we don't enforce it. They write the ticket, it goes here, it goes to my desk, and this is it. And so,
Good to know.
So it seems like a lot of the roads here,
You're welcome.
what we're running into is you're living in an old town. Our town is old, it was designed, when it was first designed, a lot of these roads and things were not wide. And a lot of people, I guess, because of the width of the road, I think that's where you see it a lot. And I think maybe the citizens don't really mean to cause a problem, and that's why it's going to be, and I think it does need to be. I know there is one particular place when you turn to go out your place, out that road, and I've noticed, and I don't care, it doesn't bother me, but I've noticed that they can't get all their cars in the parking lot, so they're parked on the road in the front of the house, you know.
That's one thing I will say, it's mostly because you've got too many vehicles, there's several people living there, and that's why it's like that.
Exactly.
Or your car broke down and you choose to park it in the street because you don't want it in your driveway. I would like to see some of that change. It's not my fault you got 8 people living there with 9 cars. I mean,
Right.
That's a single family home.
But when you talk about Park Street, that used to just be, I think, it was 2 cars when, but, I think probably the last time when we paved it, they put the line down and made it double that. We're an old town. We're gonna have some of these problems, and it's gonna be hard to rectify some of them.
How would it affect, like, the occasional, like somebody's mowing somebody's property, they can't pull into their driveway because their vehicles are there. They just pull up long enough to do their job, or somebody delivering something from somewhere. Are we gonna say that they can't do that?
Did they turn their wheels in towards the
You
No, and again, I think we should probably y'all should hear from the police chief, but do you want your officers being meter maids? Is kind of the other conversation that's occurred. And to me, in my opinion, the best thing this body could do, because you have a duty to keep roads free of obstruction, is if issues start happening in an area, you put up a sign of some kind. And then what we get into, away from the tickets, is maybe if it's a second or third ticket, we tow your car out of the way. I go back to the extreme. I park sideways on White Bluff Road, that car's getting towed. It's not getting 8 tickets over 8 days sitting blocking White Bluff Road. It's obstructing a public right-of-way. Is it as dangerous on a dead-end cul-de-sac? No, of course not. But what happens when you have so many cars parked on both sides of the road that an ambulance can't get down and someone's having a heart attack? I mean, that's always what you're thinking about. What are these worst-case scenarios? And at some point, you have to have enforcement. And so that's, I think, part of the discussion of, do you want to authorize towing, and how would that work? But only in those areas that you said are critical and have had issues in the past, and we put up signs. That's going to be best practice. A blanket no parking in subdivisions creates a lot of area where, and again, I used to live in Greenfield Ridge, parked on the road. I wouldn't want that taken away if I were still
Well,
out
you're
there.
referencing subdivisions, but technically, in some of these areas, it's not a true subdivision. They're neighborhood streets. And some of the biggest concerns involve curbs, because what's happening is the roads are blocked, people are swerving over to avoid the parked cars, and then now you've got 2 cars coming head-on, and so that's the issue.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of,
Well, that may be easier to paint a curb than the side of the street, I don't know. But again, a lot of things to take into account. We need to know what direction you want to go in, because I do think this will have to be municipal code. It'll have to be an ordinance, amending the municipal code. So it's something to think on.
Personally, I would like to do it on a case-by-case basis than a blanket. We've got a road that we're having a problem on, we got nice clear-cut curbs, great, let's paint them yellow or red. If we've got an area that doesn't have good clear-cut curbs, throw up some signs. I would just personally like to do case-by-case instead of blanket, because I do think we run into issues if we try to start blanketing stuff. I think that would be, because then we also don't have to change the law, we just what we got. That's not too much, whatever it's worth.
I like your idea of meter maid.
Well, Sharon never got any job.
And be an awful fast
Nice orange or
park there.
Okay, we have any, old business, new business, what do we want to
I have
talk
two
about?
items, if you don't mind. One of them actually might be best for our police chief, I'm not sure. Just I had a citizen bring up an issue over at Avis Landing, the rehab group out there that was not being monitored correctly, and some of the neighbors were having some issues. I'm just at a loss, I didn't know what to say, because I don't know the laws. I don't know what's all going on with that, but I had some neighbors rather upset, because they're like, wake up staring into the eyes of a homeless man type feeling, because they're just simply not being monitored out there. So I don't know if there's any laws around that or not. I don't know. I just was like, okay, well, I'll look into it. So, anybody have any?
Have we had any calls out there, how many?
Over at Hazel's Landing, the rehab area, they were saying it just wasn't being monitored or oversaw properly, and some of the neighbors were having some difficulty because they were just, apparently they were wandering into their property, into the neighbor's property, and were like staring into windows and being very awkward, and it just made them very uncomfortable. And I didn't know if there was laws surrounding it because it's a rehab recovery area. I don't know.
They can't be staring in the neighbor's windows.
I was just told from the neighbors that they're very upset because there's some crossover and it wasn't being monitored correctly. And I didn't know if there was any laws or not or what.
Of course, it wasn't one facility that changed their lens, which typically brings more problems. But I haven't heard of any complaints. I think I did hear about somebody walking through somebody's yard, but, 30 years ago, nobody cared if you walked through their yard. Of course, it's a different time now. You can't walk down the road unless you're considered suspicious now.
Right.
So I think.
I just didn't know, is there any monitoring laws or should there be? I mean, I just don't even know.
I mean, they have their system, they have their house, when it was girls, they call it a house mom, so I guess they have their house dad that is supposed to be monitoring them. I know that they're protected by a lot of rights. If there's any violation on monitoring at that level, it's state and federal, we're not playing a role. But if you're trespassing or assaulting somebody, I imagine that would be.
So I just need to smile if they call you. Okay, great. The second issue I was just wondering was an update, because several months ago this body had made a motion and approval to look into sprinkler systems, and I was just wondering where we were at with that process.
That's next after we get through these zoning things.
Okay.
I promise.
I just gotta keep nagging, man. Squeaky wheel, all the things.
And then I was approached by a citizen who said Chris Porter has offered to restore the statue at the corner of Main and 70, possibly to donate his time. And also, would the town be willing to approve that work and then possibly work with another organization like the Friends of White Bluff or someone to install a plaque or some kind of signage describing the inspiration behind that statue? Because a lot of people don't understand what the motivation was for the design of it.
What's wrong with it?
It's rusting to the point where, like, the metal may actually be deteriorating. It might need to be sanded at this point and resealed, because at some point, some of those pieces are kind of thin, and they can potentially break off.
I would love personally, this is my personal opinion, if we had something historical like a cannon or some general or somebody that we could
That
stick.
could be dangerous here.
It'd be cool. I'm just saying, I like history, and I would love something historical on the corner of the best. Let's put up a cannon and let's shoot it off every 4th of July. I'm down for it.
That was a piece of, you were here when it happened, it was a piece of art. I don't really understand it from my head, but
Apparently, they're in the know. They said it was inspired by the fire of 1946 that damaged some of the buildings in
is this
downtown.
what I'm thinking about, in the corner, Brian? But, no, that was never, it was part of the, it was part of the downtown Main Street program, something we used to make, So it really, that didn't have anything to do with it, but that would be a good place for something to but it had nothing to do with it.
Do we have history, like, do we have a huge history presence from World War II, or Korean War, or Vietnam? I'd be all for something.
Let's not go down the path of weapons or, violence.
Well,
It's next to
honor
ice
vets.
cream shop, so let's do something a little more
Just honor our
lighthearted than
vets, our
that.
history, that's all.
Brian and I have talked about, actually, since you brought that up, Brian and I talked the other day about moving it out to the Civic Center, that piece of art out there. And then Brian's going to find something else. We probably will decorate it seasonally, but also something else there. Yeah, I don't like it either, but anyway. But there was no history to it, it just was a piece of art, that they called it art.
I just like
That-
history.
That's all I know to tell you.
Maybe we need to design one that says something about the
Yeah.
reading for
I think it would be a great place for it.
I just like something, anything
I had
historical.
never heard that before, but
What?
apparently someone said that was the inspiration for that piece, and I had never heard that
Yeah,
before.
you remember when we had the grant for the downtown thing, and the consultant came in, and and Andrea Luplo worked with somebody, and
It was Eric
Eric
Langford.
Langford.
Eric Langford, yeah, but I mean, it had no particular significance, except just they thought it added a little touch of art or something dark brown. And a lot of people, and at the same time, there used to be above, up where Joanne's is down real estate, that was like a muffler shop or something. And do you remember, and I thought that was really cute, I liked it, there was a man there, the muffler man, and all of that, yeah, right, but then they came in with this, and I thought, it's just art, and it's over my head, but anyway.
Well, if we do like 19 inch of those statue of David, would make it.
Oh, Statue of Brian, yeah, there you go.
A big fig leaf. No fig leaf.
Okay, go on to your next one, I said,
No,
we
no,
wore
that
this one out.
That was the only one I had.
I think we wore this one out.
That will answer for sure.
No, Brian and Carl, I don't know if you heard that, but, and Trey,
Trey was up there.
yeah, we talked about that the other day. We actually went out there and it looks bad. So, I think we're gonna move it. And we'll do something with it. I mean, then it's come back and somebody can make a suggestion. Good point though.
The Burns has their hump out there. That's kind of neat.
It is neat, yeah.
Something our backyard is so bad.
What's the history of the Iron Forge?
We do.
There was an Iron Forge here after the fort was built?
Yeah. That was more towards Montgomery Hill.
I'm just researching Union Army encampment, happened here.
Well, and didn't they have something though down at the bluff, the White Bluff? And that's where they had a forge there, yeah.
Mercantile business and planning.
Well, I will have to say, our work sessions get really interesting. They get really, it's hard to keep them like on the tracks on down. They do get interesting.
You're gonna run it out.
Okay. Hear a motion to adjourn? No motion?
You get the call.
Oh, let's go. Get out of here, y'all, let's go.
Have a great Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yeah. It is Labor Day, isn't it?
It is. Monday off. Always off.
I know.